Hey there, welcome to this tutorial. Today we are going to solve one question from the SQL interview at Amazon. You can find this puzzle on StrataScratch. I will anyway post the link to it in the captions of my YouTube video. Now for this puzzle, our data would be some users or customers and their shopping histories. And what we are looking for is that we want to identify those users who are actively returning to buy more stuff. And then we just need to output their user IDs. And how we define a returning active user? It's a user that has bought on two different dates in less than 7 days or a week. That's a returning active user. Now let's get to know the data a little bit better. Our data contains 100 rows or 100 transactions where each transaction has an ID, the ID of the user that has made this transaction, the item that was bought, the date of the transaction, and the revenue. We don't need this column, so we can already drop it out of our computations. So as you can see, we have data for different basically transactions. Let's look at all the transactions for one user. Let's for example do it for user with ID 116. We just add the constraint and run the code. So we see that this user has bought two different items, bread and milk, and on two different dates, the 31st of March and on 12th of March. The difference between these two purchases is 19 days, which shows that this user is not a returning active user because the two purchases of this user are 19 days apart, which is way more than 7 days or a week. Now we need a way to compare this for all of the users, and one way to do that would be to join this table with itself. Let's see how it would look like if we join the table for this very user. We want to join this table which contains the purchases of the user with ID 116 with itself. To understand the results better, let's just quickly recap the concept of inner join. Because self-join is a special case of inner join, where the two tables are completely the same. For inner join, each row of the first table is going to be compared with all of the rows in the second table. In this case, we are going to join the two tables based on user IDs. Now, the user ID in the current row is 116, and all of the rows in the second table also have a user ID of 116. Therefore, they will all appear in the resulting set. The same thing is true about the second row. Therefore, our results will have 4 rows. The result will look like this. I have written the query exactly as I just described it, except that I have defined some certain columns to be returned. There are 2 points about these results. First of all, at the moment we are also comparing the same transactions with one another, and that is wrong because we just need to focus on different transactions of a certain user. To avoid this, I'm going to introduce an additional constraint and only keep the rows where the ID from the first table is different than the ID in the second table. The second point is that if you look closely at the result, you can see that we are one time comparing the transaction with ID 11 with transaction with ID 55. Then again we are comparing transaction 55 to transaction 11. This is not a problem for us per se because we only care whether a user has just once or at least once bought on two different days in less than a week. But if you needed a cleaner record, you can also introduce further constraints, like for example saying that the date in the first table should always be after the date in the second table, or vice versa. Now we just need to slightly modify this query, and then we will have our solution. So it's going to be for all users, not limited to just user with ID 116. Then we need to define constraints on the IDs, because we want to only compare different transactions with one another. And the last constraint would be that we want to only retrieve those rows where the difference between the purchase dates, or the absolute value between the purchase dates, are less than or equal to 7. We just need to return the user IDs, and we will also return the distinct values, so that the user will only appear once in the list. We get to this, which is actually the solution to this puzzle. We can also test it, and it's correct. With that, this video also comes to an end. I will post the codes on my website, and then share the link to that post in the captions of this video. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you in my next tutorial.